My name's Kenan, and today I'm just going to run through one replay of a Clash Royale game I played for you guys. My goal with this is to sort of discuss the flow of this game because there's a lot of really good videos out there that talk about specific mechanics, like hog jumping, distracting troops, using your skeletons correctly, all that great stuff, and obviously that's important, but without sort of understanding how that fits into the full flow of an entire game, it's going to be really hard to win. And so I just picked a really interesting and exciting game that I played recently on the ladder. And my hope here is to sort of discuss how I came back from a situation that was really difficult to come back from. So let's get into this replay here. And so I'm just going to pause it. I'll pause it right here. And we'll see here. So I don't know what he's playing. And I'm playing P.E.K.K.A. Double Prince. So really what I want to start with is my pump in the back. But because I don't have that, I'm just going to start with the Princess here, because that's just a cheap little card. It's usually pretty safe to drop that in the back, it stops any cheap troops from coming in, forces the opponent to make the first move without committing too much elixir. But you'll see here, so I do this, and he just capitalizes on it immediately. He drops a Hog Rider in one lane, a Prince in the other lane. Great play by him, because the problem with P.E.K.K.A. Double Prince is that especially if you're not at pretty high elixir, all your cards are so expensive, well besides the Princess, that if they drop a push like this, you really are in trouble. And so I have to make a decision here. I don't have enough elixir to drop my P.E.K.K.A. to stop that Prince, because then the Hog Rider will get in for huge damage. So really my only option is to drop my minions and my Dark Prince. And I think most people would probably drop the Dark Prince to counter the Prince, and then the minions to counter the Hog Rider. I actually do it the other way around. And the reason I decided to do this is because even though it results in my towers taking a little bit more damage, it gives that Dark Prince a chance to go charge at his tower at full health, which forces him to expend some elixir to counter it. So that way, even though we're both expending the same amount of elixir just to defend this push that he's getting so much value out of, I'll at least force him to defend again, and that might give me an elixir advantage. And we'll see that play out here. So I drop my Dark Prince on one lane, my Minion Horde on the other lane, and these lines just go at my tower. I have like so little health left. But now you'll see, so he drops the arrows, which is unfortunate that he had those, and then he drops some minions on my Dark Prince. And I was thinking about arrowing them, right? That's a pretty easy elixir win, to arrow minions and a tower and maybe give your Dark Prince a couple extra hits. But especially with a deck that relies on these big pushes, I know that I can't afford to do that. Because since I'm now down on both of my towers on health so much, I just have to take that chip damage and then start putting a push together in the hopes of taking his tower. Because otherwise I'm just never going to be able to get any momentum going. So I just leave those minions alone, and they come in and get a lot of substantial chip damage. But he hasn't answered my Princess, and you'll see here, once he answers it, he only has 1 elixir, and I have 7. So even though my towers are down on health, by sort of making those two plays, not arrowing the minions and dropping my minions as opposed to my Dark Prince to counter the Prince, I was able to get an elixir advantage and give myself a chance at getting back in this game. So now I'm going to start my push again. I love to drop the elixir collector, but especially a level 12 knight against a level 11 tower, you just can't ignore that. And so I drop my P.E.K.K.A. Takes basically no damage to stop that knight. And then he drops a baby dragon. And another really unfortunate thing about this deck is, especially when your minion horde is out of rotation or they can just arrow them, there's really nothing you can do against an air deck. Or, excuse me, an air card. And so basically at this point I'm like, well, this push is in trouble because I can't push my P.E.K.K.A. with a Prince or a Dark Prince because the baby dragon will just get so much chip damage. And so what I decided to do, I know that he's low on elixir. I wanted to drop my Prince behind that P.E.K.K.A., but instead I dropped him in the other lane. And since he has such little elixir, he goes at that tower, he gets his charge strike in, and then like 3 more strikes. If I should have dropped him a little earlier, and if I'd done that, he probably would have gotten even more damage in. And then look, down the other lane, that baby dragon, even with this recent buff, is just so weak. And so my P.E.K.K.A. gets to the tower, and it gets in pretty substantial damage. But unfortunately, just because of sort of how these cards played out, and because I couldn't answer that baby dragon, I'm in trouble now because I've just dropped all my troop cards. I'm stuck with a couple spells, an elixir collector, and a princess. And I have this huge push coming in. I can't stop that prince. That's the problem with this deck. Is that you really can't stop that unless you have like your own prince or your P.E.K.K.A. in rotation. And then in the other lane, he's got not only the baby dragon, but then he drops off the hog rider. So I drop my princess to Psycho because she's the cheapest card I had. And then I drop my dark prince to handle the prince, but it still takes out my tower. And then the hog comes in on the other lane and takes that tower. So let me pause the video here because um, at this point, I really should not have been able to come back from this. Because once you're down to only one tower and your opponent has three, there's just too many options for them. You have very little board control, whereas they can drop troops in both lanes on your side of the field, and your tower is only one tower and it's the weakest attacking tower, so it really just doesn't have a good chance at defending. Um, and so really, if he played well and just took it slow and maybe let me take a tower, even two towers, and just put together a really nice push, he could have finished me off, but he didn't. And we'll see here some of the mistakes that he makes. So he drops minions to handle my Dark Prince again. At this point, I'm honestly freaking out a little bit, so I drop arrows, hoping to chip the tower and maybe give my Dark Prince a little bit more time to maybe take that tower out. But I didn't time it right, and I missed to the minions. And then he drops a knight, so my princess would have been gone anyway. But now I have a problem because I have to immediately answer this push. Since my tower locked onto the knight, those minions are just going to get in for huge damage. And you'll see here, when I drop this minion horde to answer it, I pushed those two minions back away from my tower, and that made them lock into my own minions, which are probably just going to get arrowed, rather than continuing to attack the tower. And we'll see that eventually, something as subtle as that actually made a difference in the health that was left in my tower in the end of the game, to such a substantial point that he could have just rocketed it if I hadn't made this move right here. So it's these simple little things that you can do just to sort of keep yourself in the game. And so anyway, let's continue here. So at this point, neither one of us really has that much elixir. I have these minions coming in, but they're splitting, so they're really not that much of a threat. And his first mistake here is to immediately answer these minions, because he doesn't have enough elixir right now to put together a strong push. So he should have just waited, because the baby dragon really doesn't do that much to pressure me, especially since my cards have such high health and I don't have any swarm troops. So he didn't really need to drop this yet. But anyway, he does. None of my minions get to the towers. And now he has this lone baby dragon coming in. So I don't want my tower taking too much damage, so I pull the baby dragon with the P.E.K.K.A., letting my tower lock onto it and sort of get that damage in, start to finish it off. Well, it won't do too much for my P.E.K.K.A., but he plays this really well. And this is what I'm talking about. When you only have your king tower left, it's just so hard to defend because he drops his prince in the other lane. I have nothing to stop it. And again, I freak out a little bit here. I drop my princess, hoping that it'll stop that prince from getting his charge strike in the tower. And what I really should have done is just drop my own prince, let him get that charge strike, and then get going on the damage with that prince. But I messed up. It happens to all of us. But anyway, fortunately, double elixir hits just in time. So then I dropped my dark prince. Probably would have been better to drop my prince, but at this point, the Dark Prince is a little bit cheaper. And here, this is a huge mistake. This is the turning point, so pay attention here. Because you'll see here, so he freezes my P.E.K.K.A., and then he drops a rocket. So the thing with freeze is that if you're going to play it, you should really play it with some cheap little troops to sort of start attacking whatever is frozen. Because the freeze will basically prevent those troops from getting killed for a few seconds, and they'll get in for huge damage. Like, if he just dropped the minions there, he could have finished off my P.E.K.K.A. But instead, he didn't even need the freeze, really. Instead, he drops not only a freeze, but a rocket on this poor P.E.K.K.A. And he does finish it off. But the problem is, that's 10 elixir of just spells, so I don't have to answer to them. And so now you can see the elixir deficit he has. I'm almost at 7. He's barely at 2. And I still have 2 other troops besides that P.E.K.K.A. on the board. And so now I got my prince too. And you can see this is another huge mistake. This is spell number 3. And so granted, it does stop that Dark Prince from getting to the tower, but the Dark Prince doesn't do that much damage compared to the Prince. He really needed to answer that Prince, so he should have probably dropped like Knight and Minions or something to answer this. But he doesn't, and not only that, but his arrows miss my Princess. And you can see, before that last arrow even hits the ground, I throw my Minion Horde down on the other lane, because I know, one, that after playing, 13 elixir worth of spells, there's no way you can have that much elixir, even in double elixir time. And also, I know that those arrows were really the only good answer he had to a minion horde. And so I just capitalized on this, hoping to take that tower with my lone minion horde. And sure enough, he drops, right as I do that, he drops minions onto my prince. And this is where you really have to know your cards and know your opponent's cards, because so first of all, those minions are never gonna make it to my princess in time to kill her before she kills them. So he's losing that 3 elixir. And not only that, but you have to know that that's not going to stop my prince from taking the tower. He's already charged. I'm sure he's only level 5, but there's just no way. It's just too late. They're not even deployed by the time my prince gets that first hit on the tower. And so that's a huge mistake. If he dropped those in the other lane, he could have stopped my minion horde from coming in. And look how fast it takes down this tower. It's just gone in like 2 seconds. And when he drops the baby dragon too late, the minions just get in for huge damage on that too. And then the princess starts going to work on it. So he immediately drops a knight. Now he's at 2 elixir. I drop my Pekka. Um, to tank for this dragon. You can see I misdrop it here. My tower doesn't lock onto the baby dragon, which is really unfortunate. And again, he starts to capitalize on this other lane. I also misdropped my princess here. I should have dropped her farther away from the tower. So that he couldn't arrow both my princess and the tower. And really, I probably should have dropped that pump instead to cycle, because that way at least the hog would be distracted for a little while. Um, but instead I have to drop my Dark Prince just to sort of start getting some damage on this, because I know now that he has a rocket, and that does a little less than 600 damage to my tower, so I really need to start stopping this push and making sure that he's not able to get that tower down to under 600, especially because he also has arrows. Um, Another thing I should mention here is that because my elixir pump was so buried at first, and there's just been so much pressure from both sides in this game, I've never dropped it. So you don't have to drop all your cards in every game. You also notice I haven't dropped that freeze spell yet. Um, it's really all about timing, because if I drop my elixir pump, I take the pressure off of him. And especially when you're down by 2 towers, you really just can't afford to do that. You really need to take towers like right away if you're down by 2, otherwise you'll run out of time to do it. But anyway, so I get really, really close here to just straight losing this game. He throws arrows on my princess. The knight's going to work on my dark prince. It's barely above 600. So now, now I drop my prince, hoping to get that double prince push going. And he drops another baby dragon. So at this point, I'm like, all these baby dragons are locked onto cards, so I can actually counter them with my minion horde. And you'll see I drop that. His arrows are out of rotation again. And so he drops a really bad minion too, because those minions just took out 2 baby dragons, and they're not really even that low on health. So they're gonna come over, and you've got to know that they're gonna come over and take the rest of those minions too. So there's no reason to expend that 3 elixir, especially when I have a prince coming the other lane. But since he did that, now he has to drop the knight other than the minions of my prince, and my prince just takes that out. So now I start pressuring him a lot because I know I'm so low on health. And really, at this point, a rocket plus arrows is just going to finish me off. So I drop the P.E.K.K.A. as close as I can to the tower, hoping it'll have the tower lock onto it, and then the minions will start getting in for huge damage, maybe baiting his arrows on those rather than my tower. But unfortunately, because of that 3-second deploy time, the tower up hits all the minions. And so now he's coming at me with a prince. And again, he capitalized really well on the fact that I have that 7 elixir P.E.K.K.A. But I'm just looking at my hand here, and again, I just have so much trouble answering that prince without one of my own. So I'm just looking at my hand and I'm thinking, how can I not lose right now? How can I wait until he goes for that arrow rocket? But so I thought about dropping the pump, but I realized that freeze would actually make it take longer. So I dropped the freeze, and then I immediately, you have to back your freeze up with troops. So I dropped my freeze, and then I dropped the dark prince, and just started going to work on this. And now I have a P.E.K.K.A. on his tower. And you'll see he drops the freeze, and this time he actually backs it up with minions, which is a good play by him now, because otherwise that P.E.K.K.A. would basically just finish the tower off. But fortunately I have arrows in my hand, so as quickly as I can I arrow those minions. They still get in for huge damage on my P.E.K.K.A., but I'm able to save it and let him get 1 or 2 more shots in, which is a huge deal because each P.E.K.K.A. shot is just worth so much. And then you can see here I'm again starting my double prince push down the other lane. And normally you want your Dark Prince in front just to sort of eliminate any cheap troops that throw down. But because he was so low on health, I dropped my Prince first in the hope that he would have the tower lock onto him and let my Dark Prince keep doing damage despite how little health he had left. And you'll see here, we both are pretty much at no elixir. So he drops the only thing he can really drop at this point to sort of distract all these troops, which is the Knight. He walks all the way over to my mini P.E.K.K.A., or sorry, my P.E.K.K.A., finishes him off, but then just gets annihilated. Then you'll see right here, this is when I know I've won the game. Because as soon as I drop this princess, I know that when she locks onto the knight and hits him, she's also going to chip the tower. And all it takes is 2 princess shots um, to take out this tower at this point. And I know because this knight's not going to be able to finish off my prince, that if he's going to distract that prince again, he's going to need to drop a troop right in front of the tower. And that means that if the princess locks onto that troop instead, then she'll still chip the tower again. So at this point, I know I've won. And we'll see here, princess and then 1 prince strike, just blows it up. So the really key thing here is, first of all, if you're up by 2 towers, just sort of take it slow, just put together a nice push and finish it off. Especially if your towers are already damaged, there's no point in really trying so hard to defend both of them. You can afford to lose one if you're up by 2. Um, really, the other thing here is you'll notice he did not make good use of his spells. If he had just been a little bit better about using his spells, he could have finished off my very weakened King Tower a long time ago just with his spells. He didn't even have to put together a push. Um, but the other thing is, if you're going to use the spell, make sure that you're actually getting good elixir trades with it, because unlike troops, you can control exactly when and where you drop that spell. So there's no reason to drop it if you're not going to go up on elixir. So you can see if he drops freeze plus rocket just to finish off a P.E.K.K.A, then that's not making a good elixir trade, especially when you have minions in your hand to finish them off. And then similarly, if you're gonna use arrows, you should use arrows on cards that are cheap. Like minions, minion horde, and not on something like Prince, that just has so much HP because it costs more elixir. Right. So those are really the 2 things that I would take away from that battle. Hopefully, most of you already know that, but I guess the third thing is, even when you're down by 2 towers, everybody makes mistakes. That guy made some really good plays, but because he made a few really bad plays, and I really capitalized on those, but especially by dropping that minion horde on his weakened tower in the other lane when he had no elixir and no arrows, just by capitalizing on those plays, I was able to come back from something that I should have not been able to come back from. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Um, Hopefully, sort of me talking through my thought process just helps some newer players or even some experienced players get a new perspective on the game, and yeah, improve their play. And please leave any comments that you have in the comment section. Thanks for watching.